A heartbreaking death, the onset of severe health problems, the surprising other choice for the lead. Here's a behind-the-scenes look at The Dick Van Dyke Show. Despite the title, The Dick Van Dyke Show actually didn't begin with Dick Van Dyke himself. Instead, it was originally the brainchild of Carl Reiner. Specifically, his time as a writer and performer on the NBC variety program Your Show of Shows served as the inspiration for this new sitcom. The name of the show was originally set to be Head of the Family, with a focus on main character Rob Petrie's home life as a family man and his work life as a TV variety show writer, and Reiner was initially set to play Rob. Producer Sheldon Leonard loved the idea, but he was less enthusiastic about Reiner in the lead role. So, even though Reiner didn't end up as the star, he remained on as the show's head writer and creator, and he also appeared on screen as Rob Petrie's boss, Alan Brady. During the network's search for their Rob Petrie, future Tonight Show host Johnny Carson was among those under serious consideration. In fact, as recounted by Parade, he and Dick Van Dyke were the last two finalists for the part. In the end, Van Dyke won the role thanks to his significant name recognition coming off a successful Broadway run in the musical Bye Bye Birdie.
You go through them and you say, will it work? Might work. It doesn't work? Big deal.
Everybody who's ever watched an episode of The Dick Van Dyke Show surely remembers that opening theme song. And they also naturally can't forget the opening sequence of Rob arriving home from work and toppling over an ill-placed ottoman. But you might be surprised to learn that the theme tune also has lyrics. As recounted by Parade, the lyrics were written by one of the show's stars, Maury Amsterdam, who played Buddy Sorrell, one of the writers on the show within the show. In a 2010 interview with NPR, Van Dyke revealed the actual lyrics, which had been a mystery for some time. And then in 2013, he actually sang the full theme song for MeTV in a special music video. Although Amsterdam's lyrics didn't end up being used, that didn't stop the theme from becoming one of the most memorable in TV history. Danny Thomas was a major star and TV host in the 1950s and 60s. He had his very own hit sitcom, The Danny Thomas Show, also known as Make Room for Daddy for its first 3 seasons. Dick Van Dyke star Mary Tyler Moore had even auditioned to play Thomas's daughter on the show. He thought that she was definitely talented, but didn't think she had quite the right look to play his daughter. He even reportedly said, "No one would believe a girl with a little button nose like hers could be a daughter of mine." But Thomas remembered Moore years later when he served as a producer for The Dick Van Dyke Show and personally recommended her for the part of Rob Petrie's wife, Laura. In addition to serving as a producer, Thomas also guest starred on one of the show's most memorable episodes, Season 2's It May Look Like a Walnut. The plot features Rob and Laura getting spooked while watching a sci-fi horror movie. Then they both have a nightmare featuring Thomas as an evil alien leader trying to conquer Earth by turning humans into aliens with mysterious walnuts.
I dreamt that Danny Thomas was chasing me and throwing walnuts at me, and every place he hit me, I'd lose a thumb and grow an eye.
The role of Laura Petrie was originally intended to be more of a side character. The real female lead was supposed to be Sally Rogers, Rob's co-worker on The Alan Brady Show, who was played by Rose Marie. Marie was a former child singing star who had been in showbiz for more than 30 years by that point. So The Dick Van Dyke Show was supposed to be a perfect opportunity for her to showcase her comic and singing chops. But things changed when Mary Tyler Moore was cast as Laura. She was young and charming, and audiences loved her, so she ended up with more screen time than Marie. This reportedly led to some conflicts between a resentful Marie and Carl Reiner. Nevertheless, audiences still adored Marie's character, and she would go on to always be proud of her work on the show. As she admitted during an interview with the Archive of American Television, the chemistry of that group is what made that show. It was a good show and cleverly done. It was brilliant. I enjoyed going to work every day. I didn't know it would be a classic. For a TV show from the 1960s, The Dick Van Dyke Show was fairly progressive in its portrayal of its female characters. Sally, for example, was a professional working woman. She wasn't completely immune from stereotypes at the time, as she served as the office typist and was portrayed as man-hungry, but she still held down a vital creative job of her own. And Rose Marie was happy to bring her to life. During a reunion show in 2004, she recalled, "I've had young girls come up to me and say, 'It was because of you I became a writer.'" And even though Mary Tyler Moore was playing a housewife, she had her own ideas on how people should see Laura Petrie. Moore was determined to portray her realistically. She wasn't going to be a June Cleaver type vacuuming the house in high heels and pearls. A young mother herself, Moore insisted that her wardrobe needed to be comfortable and practical, eschewing fancy dresses in favor of capri pants and flat shoes.
Well, why don't you turn me over to the FBI?
The Dick Van Dyke Show ultimately lasted for 5 seasons, although it was nearly canceled after just one. It was unlike most sitcoms on the air at the time, witty, sophisticated, and a little controversial, so the ratings were disappointing after that inaugural year. CBS was ready to pull the plug on the show until advertiser Procter & Gamble intervened. The company's executives were huge fans of the show and threatened to yank all their advertising from the daytime lineup if CBS dared cancel Dick Van Dyke. So the network relented and gave the show a new time slot, where the ratings got a massive boost. And the show could have lasted longer than it did if the cast had agreed to it. But everyone was in agreement that it should end after season 5, while they were all at the height of their popularity. The Dick Van Dyke Show wasn't exactly a racially diverse show, although it did manage to be somewhat progressive, at least for its time. For example, in the season 3 premiere, That's My Boy, Rob and Laura tell the story of when they first brought their son Richie home from the hospital. After a series of misunderstandings, they start to worry that they ended up with the wrong baby. So they reach out to the only other couple who had a boy born at the hospital on the same day. When they meet that family, they turn out to be African American, thereby relieving everyone's worst fears. Nowadays, this twist might not seem like much, but by 1960s standards, it was actually somewhat shocking for white audiences to see an ordinary, professional, upper-middle-class black couple on a primarily white show. The story concludes with Rob and Laura stating that the two boys are now in school together, with the other son getting straight A's and their own son decidedly mediocre. While this was ultimately a very minor portrayal of African Americans in the grand scheme of things, it still stands out in the course of TV history.
I still think we got the wrong kid.
Dick Van Dyke has always been an enthusiastic and passionate performer, but behind the scenes, he was harboring a dark secret in the form of an alcohol addiction. In a 2016 interview with Oprah Winfrey, the actor admitted that he was quite anxious around others, and alcohol was his only stress reliever. As he put it, "I was very shy with strangers. I couldn't talk to people, and I found if I had a drink, it would loosen me up. The barriers went down, and I became very social. That's what got me started." Van Dyke didn't seek help with his struggle until he checked himself into rehab in 1972. His first wife, Margie Willett, was suffering from an addiction to prescription drugs herself and sought treatment at the same hospital. Their marriage couldn't survive their respective troubles or Van Dyke's hectic career, and they eventually separated and then divorced in 1984. In his later years, Van Dyke has been much more open about his past struggles. It was an incredibly long and difficult road for him to fully overcome his addiction, but he's proud that his story has helped and inspired so many others. As he admitted to Oprah Winfrey, "I get a lot of letters from people who say all of a sudden they weren't ashamed to admit they had a drinking problem and they got help. So I'm very proud of that." Behind Mary Tyler Moore's vivacious performance as Laura Petrie was the onset of some severe future health problems. She suffered from such symptoms as dizziness, weight loss, and blurred vision. She thought this was all due to stress and overwork, so she mostly ignored them. But then in 1970, when she was 33, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. In a 2006 interview with Medline Plus, the actress admitted that she was absolutely stunned by the diagnosis. As she put it, "I was, after all, a very healthy and active adult, and I didn't ever expect something like that to happen to me." Moore didn't allow her diabetes to prevent her from having a long and successful career. In addition to her acting, she became the face of diabetes advocacy and research, helping to raise millions of dollars for research funding. Diabetes was once considered a death sentence, but Moore was able to advocate for new technological developments and treatments, and thereby demonstrate that those diagnosed with the disease can lead happy and fulfilling lives.
You know, it's part of your routine.
Unlike her perpetually single character, Rose Marie was happily married for years to trumpet player Bobby Guy. They had one daughter together named Georgiana, but sadly, Guy died of a mysterious blood disease in 1964 at the age of 48. Marie was reportedly so devastated by the loss of her husband that she almost quit the Dick Van Dyke Show. But one of the sitcom's directors, John Rich, intervened and convinced her not to leave. Years later, Marie detailed in a book how kind and sympathetic everyone on the show was to her after her husband's death. As she recalled, "Everybody was so marvelous. If there were things in the script they thought might upset me, they'd write it out. They were the best in the world. They were family." When the Dick Van Dyke Show ended its run in 1966, it went out on a high note. Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore were both enjoying incredible popularity, and they were destined for even greater stardom. Van Dyke went on to star in the movie adaptation of Bye Bye Birdie, and he would also go on to star in several more TV shows and movies over the year, such as Mary Poppins, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and Diagnosis Murder. As for Moore, she went on to star in several movies before returning to the small screen. This time around, though, instead of playing a homemaker, she was the titular star as she played a single, independent career woman on The Mary Tyler Moore Show. During her Dick Van Dyke days, she proved herself by holding her own alongside show business vets like Van Dyke, Rose Marie, Maury Amsterdam, and Carl Reiner. After that experience, she was more than capable of playing the lead, and she absolutely knocked it out of the park. The Mary Tyler Moore Show lasted for 7 seasons and has endured as one of the most iconic sitcoms of all time. Clearly, the legacy of the Dick Van Dyke Show is impossible to ignore.